Mustafi. Bellerin! Brilliant! 2-2!
Hector Bellerin, Hector Bellerin. Dat is het. Ja.
All right, everybody. It's always better when Arsenal wins, and they did. They went up to Old Trafford through the trusty 3-4-3 at Man United. This time played a very different match, and it got a very pleasant, actually not pleasant, a very outstanding result. Welcome to the latest edition of Saved by the Bellerin, the Arsenal football video podcast here on the Sports Talk Line Network. I'm Raphael, joining you from the United States with my usual cohort right now, joined by Sam. Welcome, Sam.
Hello, mate. Hope everything is well.
Everything is fantastic. You know, we have 3 points, made the United fans feel glum, made the excited. Also, we expect to be joined shortly by our compatriot Ryan, who's working his way into the room. Those of you who follow him want to hear his debriefs. But anyway, let's jump right into this, Sam. Obviously, kind of a must-win match for both squads heading into Sunday. United obviously had a terrible form at Old Trafford. Arsenal had lost 3 of 4. Thomas Partey had been incorporated into the side, but the schedule did them no favors. He debuted in a part-time role in a loss against Man City. Got his first start against Leicester in a match that could have gone Arsenal's way, but in the end did not. So they needed points. They needed to turn things around. Let's start. We saw the lineup. Arteta went back to 3-4-3. It's a formation we've kind of pinged around a little bit, but he was true to it. Let's be honest. It worked really well in this match.
Yeah, I think for me, as we were discussing when we was watching the game, I wasn't a fan of this formation, and I was quite disheartened moving into the game when the lineups come out. But I've got to give credit where credit's due. The formation worked flawlessly. We outdone Man United in every aspect. I didn't feel worried in any of their attacks. The formation transitioned into something else, which we'll discuss in a little bit. But I think with this formation, it does probably bring out the best of everybody at the moment that we've got. Because obviously we've discussed looking at the 4-3-3 that we employed against Leicester. I think with that we need that creative midfielder in the middle of the park, because we just didn't get anyone between the lines. But with this formation, it's quite fluid, so it can work to another different variations. It's just a case of when we're back defending, it goes back into very solid shape.
All right, and let's start with that shape. We looked at it at the back. A big part of perhaps his decision to go back to a 3-4-3 was having Rob Holding available to him, even though we thought, David Luiz is gone. He'd been a mainstay, but Rob Holding was back. But the Kieran Tierney is available. Those gentlemen kind of hold the flanks, but the key to this is having that rock. And we're going to talk a lot about him in this episode. But here's Gabriel Magalhaes sitting in the middle of the back three, playing bigger than just one man in a back three.
Yeah, he's playing like three players at sometimes. But to deal with Manchester United's forward line, so you're looking at Greenwood, Rashford, and Bruno Fernandes just in behind. For them, they rarely got a sniff of the ball. And if they did, they've been hounded by Rob Holding, by Tierney, by Gabriel as well. But I think the presence of Gabriel as well, I don't think teams want to try and attack him head on, because they know that the strikers 9 times out of 10 will lose that battle. He's an absolute warrior in the middle of that defence, and it's a defender we've lacked for 10 plus years, to be perfectly honest with you. But again to further the praise for him. He's not just a warrior. He's so composed on the ball when we're trying to play out from the back, and you just feel a air of assurance whenever the ball's near him. Obviously, he is still adapting to the English game. So if he's able to really settle, which it seems like he has done at the moment, then I think Arsenal fans are just going to be seeing him go from strength to strength this season. And when he's got a second season under his belt next year, we're going to have one of the best defenders in the world, I think, on our hands.
And we're going to talk about him as a trade pickup, right? But let's move forward. Let's talk about the center of the midfield, because this one was the real head scratcher when the lineup came out. Obviously, Thomas Partey sitting there. Everybody knows that's a given. He's there. Mm-hmm. He's the big money. But right next to him was not Granit Xhaka. It was not Dani Ceballos. It was Mohamed El Neni. And I think we look back to the old El Neni, but very quickly it became obvious, and it's become obvious in the 7 matches this year. We were all moaning about him when the window ended. Why can't they get him out? He's stuck on the roster. Stuck on the roster. This is another player. Mikel Arteta has just pumped up his value substantially to the point now where would you start Xhaka over him if he keeps playing like this?
Boy,
not an easy question to answer.
No,
at least not for me. I don't know about for you.
This one thing I will say, and I said on Twitter, this is the Mohamed El Neni that Arsenal bought from Basel all them years back, and I think a lot of it is around the structure, because if we look at the Wenger years, we look at the 18 months of Emery, the structure wasn't that stable. So he was trying to do 2 or 3 midfield roles in a singular game, and it didn't really work. We know Mohamed El Neni has got a fantastic engine in him. It's a case of, if you tell him to simplify the game, obviously try and break up play as and when possible, to try, if he's on the ball, try and look for that forward pass. If it's not there, give it to the more creative midfielder, which Partey is, or recycle it across the back line to try and shift the opposition out of position. So I think with El Neni, Arteta's got a really great structure in place, and one that really suits his game, because it's a simple game that he plays. And if he continues like this, to answer the question around would I start Xhaka in front of him, some people are going to say sit on the fence here, but I'm going to say yes and no. The reason for that being is that in some games you need a long passer, and that suits Granit Xhaka a lot more than what it does El Neni. But in others, if it's a low block, I would probably start El Neni or Dani Ceballos, just because they've got that more intricate passing than what Granit has, in my opinion. And I just feel that if they're able to sit back and just guard maybe the 3 or 2 centre-backs that stay back in this formation, it just gives us that a bit more stability at the back, but it also allows Thomas Partey to roam forward and try to link the midfield to the attack a lot better than what we have done in recent time.
All right. Something, as you were talking about this, occurred to me, and I'm going to run this past you, see what you think. But, when we were looking in the early 2019-2020, when Arsenal was off to a decent start, when they got the wins, when they had that comeback draw, as it were, against Tottenham, and Matteo Guendouzi was at his best, and he made that wonderful pass to Aubameyang for the goal, and it was clear that he was the linchpin, or was going to be the linchpin of Unai Emery's midfield. And what was, we had talked about him, what was good about him? He had an engine. He could run all day. He had energy. He could play defense. he roamed forward a little too far. But looking at what we saw from Mohamed El Neni in this match, this improved player, this more incisive player who will now bring the ball forward, who will now look to pass diagonally to left forward, which he didn't before. That was a knock on him. He was just, everything was sideways, everything was backwards. Isn't this, but very disciplined, as you said, a simple game, disciplined game, doesn't find himself on the wrong side of the midfield line. Isn't this the game? Isn't this the player that Matteo Guendouzi was supposed to be? Yeah, absolutely. But as you say, the one key word in there is discipline. We all know Guendouzi is ill-disciplined on and off the pitch. If he could listen to instruction and stick to it, then yeah, absolutely, he would possibly be a linchpin in this midfield. But unfortunately, he's off at Hertha Berlin. If he does well there, then great. He comes back, I think, with a year left on his contract. So Arsenal will look to get as much money as possible out of that. And if he does do great, I'm more than sure that Hertha Berlin will be chucking in a fair whack of money for him, because they've had a takeover within the last year. They are quite flush with cash and they're at the start of a rebuild. So if he fits into that rebuild for them, it's just going to be a boost to our transfer kitty at the end of the day. But with Guendouzi, I think that potentially he could be this player that we're seeing from Mohamed El Neni. But with El Neni, he's a lot more humble. He's disciplined. He's mature. He's everything that you want from that type of style of midfielder. Somebody that just keeps it simple, does what he needs to do, no fuss, brilliant engine. And just to highlight as well, when he's still pressing the ball in the 91st minute and sprinting at the opposition, so they play it out for our throw-in, fantastic. You can't say any more than that. I know Thomas Partey got the man in the match award, but not Guendouzi. El Neni must have. He's the good Guendouzi. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But let's say one more thing about him before we move over to his partner, because I mean, there's so much that we could say and will say about Thomas Partey. But before we move away, because Mohamed El Neni is just like this year's gift. In the early season, he is another tool in the midfield, and obviously it seems Partey is now the linchpin. And he's got Arteta now has these other tools that he can work with. So where does El Neni fit? Against what kind of club is he the proper partner for Thomas Partey, in your opinion? Obviously, he worked against United, but I mean, what style, what opponent would you look at and say, okay, I'm expecting El Neni and Partey this week?
I would say probably the top 12 teams for El Neni. The rest would be a toss-up between Ceballos and Xhaka, but again, it depends on whether or not the opposite team employs a low block, because I'd also say it depends on the formation as well. A big thing of it centres around the formation. I think that if we're looking at El Neni, you can't have a midfield of El Neni, Xhaka and Partey. It needs to be one of El Neni or Xhaka, and then Partey and Ceballos if we're going to play a free. And if Ceballos isn't available, then potentially put in there as the more exploratory midfielder. But if you're playing a 3-4-3, looking at that match, I'd probably say that's the most secure we've looked all season. So potentially El Neni might have just cemented himself as the one of the first choice midfielders. It's down to how Xhaka and Ceballos respond to this, and it'll be very interesting in the game against Mould on Thursday as to who starts in that game, because I feel that it will be Xhaka and Ceballos as the two starting midfielders, and that will be a clear indication.
Well, let's stay again. Let's move over. Let's stay in the United game, right? We've talked about Elneny, very pleasant surprise, but let's bring it into the broader context of the spine of this club. Arsenal's made two significant buys in the summer window. First was Gabriel Magalhaes, right? He's the kind of the lumbar, the lower back. Everything is stable. In front of him now, in his third start. Where do we begin talking about the instant and immense value of Thomas Partey? I mean, I'm not going to try to choke it off or lead you away. I'm just going to let you run with it. There's 10 different things we can say about this, but where do you want to begin?
I think I want to begin first and foremost. The guy's just an absolute complete midfielder. He's got it all in his toolbox. He's got everything that you need. And I saw a quote from Michael Essien today saying that he's actually better than me. He's better on the ball. He's quicker. He reads the game well. He's got that fantastic passing ability. He's literally just got everything. And I think opposition fans are bitter towards Thomas Partey and how Arsenal have got him, because he instantly improves every single team in this league without a shadow of a doubt.
And let's stay with that, because it was one of the comments as we were doing this, having a watch along, but we instantly to see, in the match, and you had access to it. I've seen it since then. I think a lot of the people who are watching now, if you haven't seen it, go and look for it. But Roy Keane was part of the commentary team, and he walked and he gushed over Thomas Partey after the match, saying he played against, he made the comparison we all did. He played against Patrick Vieira, and this was a player worthy of that stature. And coming from him, and we know he's a curmudgeonly type. He does not give these compliments away easily. That's quite a statement about Thomas Partey.
Yeah, absolutely, and one that's very well deserved, to be perfectly honest. Like we've been looking for that player in our midfield since Patrick Vieira, and we've never found it really. I think the discussion we had at the weekend was, I think Diaby could have been that player, but more technically sound. But unfortunately, the injury caused by Dan Smith curtailed his career, unfortunately. But now we've got Thomas Partey, and I would say, obviously, the game's moved on a lot since Patrick Vieira. So I think it's more towards Thomas's technical ability, his strength and power in the middle of the midfield. But one thing that we've got to highlight as well is how agile the guy is. Yeah. He can really dribble himself out of tight situations. He's very comfortable on the ball. He'll do quick 1-2s. Even if he loses the ball within about 30 seconds, whether he's the first ball or the second ball, he's won the ball back. He's instantly turning that possession over.
His heat map for that match was just all over the place. We talked about it, but he was just this sponge in the midfield. It's kind of, he was deep, he was wide, he was forward, and never found himself out of position.
No, and I think you've got to credit his reading of the game first and foremost for that, because he recognises situations before they're happening, so he adjusts his positioning accordingly. And if that does change via deflection, he's instantly getting himself into a better position, so he doesn't get caught out in the middle of the pitch. So with him and Gabriel, it instantly shores up our middle of the pitch, and that's where we've struggled in recent years. I think that now we've got that spine, teams are having to play round us, and teams are very scared of what we're capable of doing now, because obviously we've seen Leicester change the way that they play to play against us. We've seen City changed how they play when they played against us. Unfortunately, them 2 games ended in losses, but it's making other teams think about how to adapt their game to our game now, instead of us adapting to them. And that's a big thing.
Yeah, let's talk about that confidence and the discipline. El Neni gives Partey the license to go forward, and we talked about he can do that. He's got the talent to do that. And now I think is the assurance that if he does venture forward, first off, he can get back on his own if he has to. But secondly, he's got somebody who's not going to look over and he's not going to find this guy with him. And we're like, oh, why are we both up here? And then the counterattack is flowing backwards. But let's talk about that tactic, because we talked about that confidence early on. United came out in a 4-4-2, Arsenal in a 3-4-3. We thought, United likes to counterattack, so they let Arsenal have the ball. But Arsenal, it was never I don't think a fear, it's certainly not in the first half, that they would give it away and be caught on the break. And you talked about it, and Ryan talked about that. Hopefully you'll be joining us shortly. But we looked up about 30 minutes, and you were saying it looked like a 4-2-4. Like Arsenal was sure enough. They said, let's just go grab this.
Yeah, we looked very aggressive in the press.
Yeah, go ahead.
We looked very aggressive in the press, and with that formation, as I was saying earlier, it can transition very quickly. We saw who is it? Saka going off to the left midfield, or coming into the middle
center, right? Yeah.
Lacazette, he obviously, we want to say he was a striker, but it seemed that he was more of a second striker. So the one to drop deep, to try and link the play in. But I've made my feelings known with Lacazette this season. I think that I just don't know what type of striker he is at the moment, or if he can be defined as a striker. Obviously, some of it may come down to instruction as to what he's been asked to do, but I think he expands too much energy when we're defending. But I'm digressing. Just to move into back to the formation, I think with him next to Aubameyang, that works, because obviously they've got that telepathy between each other. And with Willian on the right, that gave a lot of balance, because we didn't have people cutting into the middle of the pitch to congest it there. We had players that could go players that can go down the line, and players that can also move inside as and when necessary. But the primary movement, is down the line. And I think with that benefits us, and it gives more space to Aubameyang and Lacazette in the middle. And obviously having that high press, we all know Manchester United's backline is fragile at best when they're at Old Trafford, and they made so many mistakes and they lost the ball so much to us. And having El Neni and Partey backing that up when they're trying to get people like Pogba, Bruno Fernandes, Fred, and who's the other one? McTominay in there, but second half Van der Beek, they couldn't find these guys, and that's due to the six guys, middle two, four up top. They just made Manchester United's life hell, and they just didn't recover, and they couldn't adjust to it because they didn't know what formation to adapt to.
And let's talk a bit again. Let's bring El Neni back into the conversation, because this is something I want to discuss with the two of you. Something I noticed early in the match. I mean, earlier when Arsenal played Liverpool, you were talking about, and you were mentioning this during the match, how effective Liverpool is when they press other clubs. They come with like a cross, like a 1-3. They have one, they bring their forward three, and they each press. One is on the keeper, the two are on the two wingers go after the center backs when they go out wide. And then, they had, I think it's Firmino comes up in the center and it just sits right there waiting to pick up all the garbage. And Arsenal was doing that. And it's funny, the guy who was coming forward at the center of that cross was Mohamed El Neni. And this gets back to that energy he had in the middle of the park was quite effective. We don't look to him to score, but he was very good at picking off balls, collecting trash and feeding other people, feeding it to Partey, feeding it to forwards, and just keeping the ball and keeping Arsenal comfortable in United's half, certainly in the first half of the match.
Yeah, most definitely. And that's somebody that you need, somebody that's going to be looking to win the second ball. And you could see when the ball was going up into the air or we're going in for challenges, he was already on the move. He's already anticipating where the ball may fall. And to a certain extent, Partey does that as well. But if you look at the two of them as a pairing, they've got like a probably about 5 foot piece of rope between them because they wasn't far apart from each other. And when you look at when we've got Xhaka in the middle midfield, our midfielders sometimes can get so far apart, and because he knows that he hasn't got the speed to get back, he drops far too quickly and far too early. And I think with El Neni, he doesn't do that. He holds his position because he knows he's got that speed to then recover. Same with Partey. And with Manchester United, with them two in the middle, they was, as you say, they was just clearing up that midfield. Any loose ball, they were on it instantly. And a lot of credit has got to go to Mohamed El Neni because he directs people very, very calmly as well. He knows what he wants from people around him. He's constantly talking. He knows his role. He knows what other people should be doing. And it was just a tactical masterclass by Arteta, I think. And I think it's one that really awoken a lot of people and opened a lot of people's eyes because we have people that question Arteta, what he does in game, what he does before the game. But on this game, you've got to give credit where credit's due. He absolutely flummoxed Solskjaer, and there's no two ways about it.
All right, that leads to two numbers, though. We're going to talk about a good number, a very old Arsenal number, and a very un-Arsenal number. Maybe it is an old Arsenal number, but the first number is 7. Okay, that's the number of goals that Arsenal's conceded in 7 matches. They're now top of the table, top of the league in fewest goals allowed. You know, we have to go back, to look at the George Graham days, that great back line he built. But this is a back 3, but it doesn't matter. We know that when Arteta came, priority 1 was stabilizing the back line. Now with the addition of Gabriel, now with Partey sitting in front of him in the middle, you've got a real energy player like Tierney on one side. That's come together. I mean, that whether we like it or not, Arsenal's identity right now is they're they're tough, and certainly not. We're not used to that, at least not in recent years. No,
obviously, we've all been crying out in recent years to say we need to shore up our defence, and we've done that. It's just a case of finding that balance. Obviously, where we are at the moment, hell, if we're winning 1-0 every game, not going to complain about that. I know people want to see free-flowing football, but sometimes you've got to make some sacrifice to have that defensive stability. And what people have got to realise is the limitations that we have got in this squad regarding creativity, and that unfortunately wasn't sorted over the summer. I think that was really the only thing that we was missing from a complete summer window. But I think if you look at Thomas Partey and the way that he was playing against Manchester United, he was the key creator in that midfield. And once he knows his teammates, once he knows the runs that people want to make, you'll see him getting a lot more assists. And I think if we're able to go for someone like Aouar in a January window, potentially you're looking at a 4-3-3, but a more complete 4-3-3, because you've got somebody that's able to play between the lines and somebody that's going to really test your position in that aspect and ask questions. But right now, we're just going to have to wait and see when we come against somebody that's got a low block, because I think the way that we are looking to play against oppositions with low blocks is to try and get down the side of them. Hence, in the Leicester game, we saw overloads on the right fullback and left fullback and the big diagonal over the top. But it's just something we're going to have to maintain and see how we adapt at this point. But it's looking promising. It's just a case of we'll just have to see how we get through to January, see where we go from there, really.
Okay, well, let's stay with that, because on the flip side, 7 is a great number. 7 is number one, fewest goals. On the flip side, we look at goals scored, only have 9, and that is 14th, and that's not where we're used to. Certainly not any time in the Wenger era. Emery, well, we're not going to talk about Emery. Emery's past tense. but even with Arteta coming from City, being an Arsenal player, being part of Wenger squads, we're expecting that. He talked about, Arsenal football, Arsenal identity. Some pieces are there. It seems like not all the pieces are there. What's he going to do, between now and the New Year's and the January window to, obviously that's his next task. It seems that job one is solidify the spine with talent, with formation, with discipline, certainly with conditioning. Their lungs are much better, certainly than they were when he took over from Emery. But what can they do to get the ball in the goal more often in the next 2 months? It's a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. It is a big challenge. And I'm hoping Arteta's got the answers, because I haven't. I think it's just a case of, if we're playing a low block, as I say, it's trying to get down the sides of them and getting back to the Arsenal football of having that quick, intricate passing at the top of the pitch. And I think people like Saka will help with that. Ceballos can help with that as well. You look at Partey, how he can play the quick 1-2s around the corner. The only concern I've really got around that is somebody that like Lacazette, where he hasn't got the confidence at the moment. The ball goes into him, sometimes it just bounces off, or he holds on to it for too long. He tries turning into defenders, and that's where it falls down. Obviously, he's not the only one. But then also you've got to put into consideration, we need a striker that can do the hold-up, can do the quick passing, but also make them runs in behind. Because sometimes when Lacazette's playing, teams know he doesn't like to run in behind. He'll just play in front of them, and they instantly know they can step up onto him. And we've seen it time and time again. I think that he needs to sit down and have a bit of a reevaluation of how he's playing at the moment. Because if you look at Nketiah when he comes on, he's done very well in the hold up. He also likes to move behind. But yeah, I just think we need to mix it up a little bit more in terms of the attacking, become less predictable of what we're looking to do, and just try and move teams around a bit quicker instead of always looking to get down the sides of them.
All right, and you've just raised a question that we started pondering during the match, and obviously this is gonna be a topic in November, in December, and certainly when the window opens. And we welcome your names, we welcome your feedback, because this is you just put your finger on it. We've seen, it seems Arteta's setting up a squad that can score. He's got some really good crossers, especially on the left in his attack, right? You've got Tierney, who's been just serving up luscious crosses on a plate to all the strikers. We've got Saka, we know that just straight out of the box, all the assists that he piled up last year. Is this simply a matter of, might Gabriel, we've forgotten, might Gabriel Martinelli help unlock this? Or are they really lacking a taller player, a more traditional target man, or somebody of that ilk who can convert those crosses with his body, with his head, with his strength?
I think Martinelli will also be a big benefit because, again, that pushes teams backwards. We've seen all sorts of goals that he's been able to score. I do think that we need to potentially be looking at another striker, one that can do a bit of everything. I would still look at Edouard from Celtic. Yeah, but again, it boils down to the question because also you've got to remember you've got Bellerin coming through. He made his first team debut last Thursday. Still looking for him to sign that new contract. So, and you could tell with his interview after the game, he's got that elite mentality of, I want to play, I want to be the best, I want to be in this team. But I just think in terms of unlocking defences, I think Martinelli will be a big plus coming back. Obviously, fans can't expect too much too soon from him because he's coming back off of a massive injury. But we've all seen the pictures of him in some of the behind the scenes. He's an absolute unit now. He's really worked in the gym. It's just a case now of getting him back up to speed and hoping that nothing else goes wrong for him. But I think that him being back will be a big plus. And I think that, I know him and Arteta had a disagreement on his best position when Arteta first took over. Arteta sees him as a striker, but Martinelli likes to play off the left. But if there's a compromise where they're playing if we play the three up the top that are inner strikers, I think Martinelli will cause a lot of teams a lot of problems.
Yeah, and we were very impressed. We're looking, if you go back and look at the 10 goals that he scored last year, the number that he scored with his head, his ability to, as you said, he might like being on the wing, but he doesn't have any difficulty getting into the box and then converting when the ball comes his way. I mean, he's a guy who wants that. Now, wrap up here. We're in injury time of the pod. So let's talk about the coming week. International break is looming, but still a couple of matches, one more Europa League, and then it was kind of a break, but not that easy of a break going back to the Prem. But, Arsenal finds itself right off the top. There was a lot of congestion. 8th place or 9th place, but only 2 points out of 3rd. 4 points off the top.
I think
1 point.
I think we're 1 point off second.
Oh, well, it was that club from Tottenham is in second. They're 2 points ahead of us, but you're right. 1 point out of 3rd, 2 points out of 2nd, only 4 points out of 1st. A lot to be played for, a lot of goals. No reason to minimize or compromise and say, well, let's see if we can settle or we can maybe get this March. I mean, yes, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. This is a club that finished 8th last year. This is a club that really needs to think about top 4 before it thinks about the top. But given the strength of the league, the makeup of the league, the injuries to Van Dijk, Liverpool's looking a little wobbly. Nobody else is really running away with it. We all have to look at it and say, why not us at this point?
Yeah. Well, absolutely. We've always said top 4 is the goal, and it's very open this season. Yeah, I really think that we're getting into that top 4. I think that the next game against Mould, I think we'll see a strong team, so we can tidy up the qualification out of the group. That'll be a nice and easy. And then the back end of the 3 games will be more of the youthful teams. So hopefully Bellerin will get a lot more minutes in that aspect. But then we're playing Villa next, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a winnable game. Very, very winnable game. We all know they're leaking goals at the moment. And I think that if we really hit
goals right now.
Yeah. If we can really make everything click, we'll have a very big result against them, I think. I know they're quite dangerous and they've scored a few goals, but they're conceding more than what they're scoring. But with our back line at the moment, I don't see Villa getting anything out of that game. So I think it's going to be a very positive back end of the week for Arsenal, and hopefully we're back here next Tuesday celebrating some more wins.
And a little rise in the table. So again, on that happy note, we're coming off a happy week, looking for another one. We want to thank all of you who joined us live, all of you who watch us or listen to us on all our various programs. Hopefully we'll have our full contingent back, get Ryan and break this down a little bit more, show you more visual results, kind of more visual breakdowns. But again, we appreciate you, and we look forward to seeing you again this weekend. We're working on some watch-alongs, but certainly next week when we meet again for pod. So for Sam, I'm Raphael. We bid you good night, and go Arsenal.